Kevin, CPO at Molecule. Yeah, this is actually our home, our living room. I should go here. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. But before I get started, I want to say that, yeah, it's an honor to be presenting here. But at the same time, I'm also a bit disappointed at the moment. The reason is this is still a crypto conference, and I haven't had a single GM. So GM guys, welcome to the DeSci conference. Happy to have you here. Cool. The title is basically making science liquid. I think the problem here, or not the problem, is that basically science or scientific IP is one of the most valuable assets that exists to a degree, but the market infrastructure for it is a bit broken. I think I will go a bit deeper into what I actually mean with this, if the thing is working, sort of. No? Okay. Can I swipe? Technical difficulties. Yes, it is off. Thank you. All right, and now we go. Yes, technical difficulties as always. I want to give you a bit of an insight into why we do what we do at Molecule. I think I will start off with the problem space. So I think everyone has problems. Same goes for science. Where I'm coming from is that actually the engine is a bit staling, right? Science is staling. Intellectual property, or at least the things that it runs on are a bit like, let's say, 19th century, right? I think we talked about this earlier. Paul was mentioning during this talk as well. You have Ehrum's law. It gets more costly over time. Actually, if you look at the figures as well, R&D spend actually increased 18 times since 1960. You do see that the number of publicated papers actually goes up, but the decline in disruptive paper output actually goes down, right? So it boils down to these outcome versus output discussion, and I think AI is just going to make things a bit worse. And then I think, Oliver, you were also mentioning this early on in the talk, is that the R&D spend is insane, right? It's like 2.4 trillion at the moment. All of this was published in Nature, so it's not just me making up figures. So we're actually not running out of ideas. We're running out of ways how to move them efficiently through the market. Just to go a bit deeper into this, and I think I turned it off again. No. Oh, I'm switching there. Interesting. Okay. I'm not switching on the... Okay, whatever. Then we use this one. So what you see here is actually a breakdown of this, right? So I think intangible assets is actually a $61 trillion opportunity, and science is actually 1/3 of this, right? So 21 trillion. And I think this is just goes to show like how much in theory value there is, right? And I think also BlackRock was mentioning this. Everything is going to get tokenized at some point. Everything is going to be able to more or less run on blockchain rails. And we're here to actually do this for science, right? I think that's core goal. We were talking about tokenization. We're talking about means to fundraise for this. I think the current system here is still a bit bottlenecked to degree, right? It's very gate-capped, so there are a handful of intermediaries that actually are in control. And of course, they have an incentive to actually stay in control, right? They're not really interested in actually changing things much because they're actually profiting from it. It's still very much analog. This is what I mean when you say 19th century rails. So it's paper contracts, legal contracts, off-chain, somewhere stored in person. And you can just think about this, how it actually can slow things down in a way where I think just having things, let's say, online, on-chain, just makes it much easier to actually trace things over time, understand what is happening over time, and then just be able to, have it end-to-end to a degree. It's very illiquid to a degree as well. So even if you have a patent and you have it within your portfolio, you're not really able to leverage its full potential. What I mean with this is, to give you a concrete example, think about a way where you have something very valuable, you're able to port this on-chain, so existing IP, for example, and then actually being able to price things, and then, for example, being able to use, let's say, all of crypto, DeFi in particular, and use this as a loan, or use it as collateral for a loan, right, to be able to get more liquidity out. So I think there's a really interesting technology with this that can be leveraged, and we're trying to basically bridge that gap for science. Nice. Just to be a bit precise on the audience, or let's say the ask for this, it's always two sides, right? You will have the supply side, which is, of course, the researchers, the labs, the actual people doing the magic. Now we also have agents on the very right-hand side. And then, of course, you have the other side, so the money, the Olivers of the world, which is the capital allocators, people actually being able to fund this. We tried this in a, let's say, more crowd-sourced way, so basically being able to, let's say, allow degens or retail users to invest into these things. And then, of course, we also have, let's say, the larger institutions coming in, big pharma institutions that are kind of interested in this to a degree, but are still very hesitant on this. And I think this is something that also, for our side, is just whom are we targeting? It is, of course, both sides, and then just being really precise on this. Of course, what I'm saying and putting on the slides is always just numbers, right? But I actually want to come with some receipts on this. Paul mentioned this during his talk. This is not just numbers that I put on the slide, this is on-chain data. So the beauty of this is, with blockchain, is that everything is some sort of, let's say, it's very transparent and traceable, right? I can go in, I can actually check, I can check the contracts, I can go in, I understand how much money was actually raised for science, what is the current AUM, so we're talking right now for the ecosystem around like roughly 40 million, which of course is not all liquid. We did raise a lot of money through these IP token model, so you see this at the bottom. For research projects in total, just let's say recently through Molecule and also then partly Bio, 6.1 million deployed for the projects, 125 projects launched, more than 30,000 community members, and those are still small numbers against the 21 trillion problem that I was outlining earlier, or as of last week, just to give you a bit of comparison, how large this is, 21 Elon Musk's problem. But yeah, anyways, the protocol as it was before, let's say we have a bit of an inflection point, was quite strict in the hierarchy how you use things, right? So we started very early on in the funnel, which was just, we call it proof of invention. Actually, we also have Stefan here, who put in a big chunk of work getting this off the ground. But TLDR, it was just an on-chain registration of an idea. Think about putting things into an envelope, putting a stamp on it, sending it to yourself, and then you basically had some proof from the post office that was able to say, on that given day, I had this, and then I have this as a proof. Nothing crazy, bridges over to on-chain world. We allow people, that was the hypothesis that Paul mentioned, just for people to register ideas at this stage, right? It's just literally a ledger that you write this on. We then went further with the IP NFT. That actually was the first Web3 native way of creating a token, a unique token, if you're not very much into crypto, and basically assign some legal wrapper to it. So think about a token with a PDF wrapper. Very static, but at least some representation of some value onto the blockchain. Further down was the actual fractionalization of things, so being able to, instead of just having one unique piece, have as many as you want, and then inviting people in. Being able to fundraise using these tokens, being able to give this away as a means to contribute, whatever that is, expertise, network. So I think it was just some, let's say, economic layer for the primitive. And then lastly, and this was a big push, actually roughly a year ago when we introduced this, the first version, excuse me, which was Molecule Labs. Because what actually ends up happening is you tokenize all of this science, you raise the money, you give the money to the people to do the science, but then there's a bit of a disconnect, right? Because then you have a token trading and you have a price chart that is actually going up and down, but you don't really have a way to understand what's actually happening with the project underneath, what's the progress, are they hitting milestones, so the due diligence parts, more or less. And our idea was to be able to combine this in a way where there's even an on-chain trace of what's happening with the project, the data that's been committed. So think about it like a GitHub repository, but for science. I think that would be a good analogy. So what did we learn? What worked, what didn't work, what actually changed our minds a bit with this? I kind of already talked about this a bit, but what worked was the IP NFT. There was traction. I think we also got a big shout out, if I don't want to lie here, but I think there was a Forbes article around this. But yeah, anyway, so it got some attention. Of course, it was 2022, right? Like NFT was the hype. We applied it to IP, and then people were like, amazing, token. But this was not the only thing, right? So we had projects adopt this, tokenize assets, use this to raise money in. We also had the opportunity to really basically establish from the ground up an ecosystem, the BioDo ecosystem. So think about them as communities that basically go towards a certain research vertical and are trying to basically build their own portfolio. We have HairDAO, AthenaDAO, we have VitaDAO in the house that are very much focused on longevity, hair loss, women's health, much more, Cerebrum DAO, too many to name, but really interesting. So that worked, and then I think also this was the whole thing about being able to raise capital, but then also being able to understand how much of that capital was actually deployed into the science. And this is one of the biggest friction points and also the critique we basically faced last year. So I'm kind of going into what didn't work already. I have to honestly say crypto is still a blocker for a lot of very serious people coming in. It's not a feature, but it's a bug. A lot of people outside of the space rather see this as automations. And I think that's also what we, as a protocol, as an ecosystem, kind of need to lean in with. We're always led with the technology and expected users to come and build basically beautiful tech castles in the sky. But then at the same time, I think we need to realize that we need to meet the users where they are, and we need to make it or repackage it in a way where it's away from tokens, it's away from, let's say, very complex loops that you need to jump through, and just make a user experience so much easier. So the goal is rather to have it run in the backend, right? To not talk about it too much, to just have it function really well, and then basically allow for an experience that is less, or let's say, yeah, less frictionless. No, more frictionless. Less frictionless, more. All right, anyways. Where I want to go with this is also, we deployed a lot of tokens, a lot of primitives. It was very scattered because, especially as a startup, right? Like, you need to place very educated bets. And what ends up happening is, like, you develop all of these things, but then they don't really fit well together. And it becomes even more friction for people to use this. So what changed our mind was actually, we need to be able to still run on token rails, on blockchain rails, right? We still need to be able to give people means to raise capital through this technology, but we also need to make sure that it's not just the token and the money that sits within, but it's very easy for people to understand what is happening behind the scenes. We actually have a really amazing talk later on from our protocol architect, Phil, who's going to go into the machine. I also have a slide for this, but I don't want to take away his talk. Also, big learning for us, especially, I would say, since last year, November, was agents are here, cat is out of the box, they're staying. So we also need to be able to give them, I would say, infrastructure that they can work with that is powerful, right? Because I think, going back to the analogy of the end of the internet, if you don't give them good tools or they don't have good context, they're not bringing the value that they can do, right? So I think it's also just the better system you can build also in agentic ways, the more efficient it works. Yeah, and then I think also, again, right, what changed our minds is we want to be taken serious. We don't want to be just the degens. We don't want to just speculate on retail, putting stuff in, and then at the end of the day, you set the mountain, we say the Burj Khalifa, and I think that's a scoreboard that we have, right? And I think we need to be able to create assets that actually appreciate and value and bring something back to the people that are supporting this. And I think having actors like Michael Torres in here as well, very credited people that are actually able to exit this as well and show this, I think is what we need to lean in on. And I think it's not just all of the early moonshot ideas, but it's actually being able to, from the idea through the progress to then actually getting to an exit and creating, appreciating assets. Cool. What changed our minds? This is actually where we're coming from now. So we're going a bit, not away from things, right? But the idea is basically to go from products to substrate or to protocol. We want to be verifiable by default. We want still a permissionless system where the creator owns the asset that they do. They can still decide who gets what chunk and how they contribute, but it's not molecule or bio or the ecosystem owning these assets. It's still the creator. And one thing that is really important, as already outlined, it needs to work for humans, but it also needs to work for agents. So what does that mean? And this is actually the talk that Phil's going to go a bit deeper in. But the TLDRs, instead of just having one token that is very static, we're going into a protocol that is much more, I would say, dynamic in a sense. We want this. We want this to be reflecting of how science is actually happening. We want people to be incentivized to actually push the data in, right? To be able to learn from each other. With agents, it's easy. You can just tell them, publish negative data. Great, here it is. For humans, it's a bit different, right? It's a lot of results that are not being published. And I think our goal is really to try to, Charlie Munger said this, show me the incentives and I will show you the outcome. And we want to make sure that the incentives between the people actually doing the lab work and extracting capital in while providing data is kind of matched with also the funder side of things, right? Where there's like creating a win-win situation where both parties are kind of working in tandem, and ideally that much quicker and much more capital efficient than before. I'm not going to go into all of these details, but the TLDR is Phil's going to take you into the machine. Maria's going to do a great job at actually showing you how that looks like. I'm a big fan of, how do you say it? Protocol-led growth through products. So we need to be able to show the capabilities to a degree. Cool. Yeah, I already talked about this. Oh, I'm missing an icon. Okay, whatever. It's programmatic by default. So actually spend a great deal on making sure that our infrastructure is programmatic, so accessible by agents. We have really cool, let's say, agent fleets that is super easy to spin up. We talked about the Mac Minis from Elliot as well, right? Just have that in-house. We want less friction for people to actually interact with this as well, because there's so many steps in between, setting up your own agents, getting a Mac Mini, being able to think through token stuff. So I think it's just packaging things up, learning while doing so at the same time, and then also really sharing the learnings from our side as well. How do we work with agents? How does it all plug into the token economy? And then at the end of the day, try to create something meaningful out of this. So we have the agent fleet uptime there. We also have Open Lab that was just mentioned, which used to be beach science as an experiment. But it's more like agent native experimentation running on infrastructure that we have. And then one really cool example, and I think it is happening in a panel, is that we have, and Paul mentioned this in his talk, we have Pept AI. So basically agents trying to create new peptides for, let's say, certain diseases. Ideally, this at the end of the day becomes a place where you can go and you can ask for help for your condition. If the condition exists, amazing, it's going to tell you how you can cure it. If it doesn't exist, it should help you create the cure that you have, whatever that is. So I'm sweating very much right now because I'm on stage, so maybe that is something that I will be looking to. Anyways, cool. Where are we going with this? Closing loop. How am I looking on time? Oh, amazing. I need 5 more minutes, so you guys don't ask any questions. What we really want to create is science as an asset class, finally. It is already an asset class, but we want to improve it, right? It's like the next frontier. We want to have it programmable, English is not my first language, liquid, and also AI native. We want to go from trapped in TTOs. We also had that experience, honestly, speaking with universities, dealing with TTOs, trying to educate them at the same time, trying to get them to actually do the work. Is so hard, and it's a lot of grinding. We want to go from trapped in TTOs to foreign discoverable labs, literally, have the ability for people to see what is out there, have the ability also for people to actually go in, understand what data is there. The lab, or let's say the protocol, works in a way where we have full, Phil, you let me know if I'm going ahead with the talk, but we have full control about who gets to see what. Everything is traced at the same time, and at the same time, it's also possible to make it fully encrypted. You can make it fully open, so you can lean into the open science narrative, but you can also just go the more traditional route of actually trying to protect your valuable thing. But you still have means to actually run this on blockchain rails, transact it, move it, have history around this. Yeah, and then also get exposure towards DeFi and just the broader crypto ecosystem. We go away from analog contracts into programmable licenses as well, right? That's the beauty of blockchain. The code is law. It's readable, also by machines. So it's really nice for us to be able to determine let's say, the terms also in code, so people can actually understand what's happening, or let's say it's a bit more automated in a way, where you don't need to trust intermediaries. Illiquid IP actually turns liquid, right, through tokens, as always. It's part of the crypto game. And we're going away from human-only science into more agentic science. And I think right now, I'm at a stage where I'm really bullish on agents, and I think it is not going to go away. At the same time, I'm also very skeptical in a way that they're just going to replace us all. So I think it's going to be some sort of hybrid. I don't think humans are going to give up control immediately. It's probably going to be some sort of, I come with an idea, I have, let's say, agent supporting. I think Bezos said this, right? You're a construction worker, and now all of a sudden you get a bulldozer, so you're going to be much quicker in executing your work. But that's how we see things. So AI native, but still with a human in. And then at the end of the day, and I think this is also one of the biggest questions, is how does it actually going to work with, the existing IP system, patents, etc. How does it work when agents create things? Does there still need to be a human in the loop in all of this? So I think it's a lot of hard questions, a lot of nuances that are not make or break, but are really important for us to consider. And then at the end of the day, right, we want to go away from this offline 21 Elon Musk's dark matter into something that is a bit more investable asset class, and that actually allows other people also to get exposure, right? I'm not saying my mother and father, but I mean, there should be means for other investors that want to diversify their portfolio to also invest into these assets. And maybe it could be as simple as just investing into vertical and then having other people basically allocate for you. It's kind of like an index fund. But yeah, this is it. I think, oh no, never mind. I have one more. 4 asks. So I don't know everyone in this audience. I know a lot. But for the supply side, I really want you to reach out to us. We're trying to refine the projects and the products running on top of our protocol. So basically, if you're running science, if you want to run it on chain, if you think that this might be a good model for you to, for example, fundraise for your idea, come talk to us. You can basically identify us by the t-shirts, so you can just have a chat with us. For the capital allocators, let's also chat, because we're super keen on understanding what is important for you to look at when you look at projects. So I know you mentioned this a bit during the panel, but we're trying to basically experiment also with scoring, AI scoring. I don't want to go into Maria's talk, but it would be really valuable to get that feedback and understand what are the metrics or what are the things you're looking at, besides sentiment and all of these things, that would be interesting for you to browse. So some sort of like marketplace to a degree as well. And then, of course, to the builders, and that also goes a bit more into the protocol vision. I think as a blockchain protocol, it is really important that we go away from very centralized development process, because it's not, we can't build it all. Even with agents, we can't. So it is really important to build a very good foundation, like a house, but then allow other people to start contributing to things, right? And Phil did a really amazing work of thinking about it in a modular way, where in theory you have the bare bone, let's say, core of the protocol, but you can extend it, right? You can think about, okay, maybe I need another function. I want to be able to claw back my funds in case projects are not delivering, and then redistribute to another. So these types of things is in the open. So think about it like an app store. But we're really keen to also get more people on board on this. At the moment, it's only molecule and bio-based modules, because we need to guarantee for some security, especially when you deal with tokens and money. But we would be really keen on having external contributors as well. And then last but not least, if you're an institution, actually go speak with Ben. He's the subject matter expert on all of the legal things, coin-to-company model that are coming. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to my TED Talk, and enjoy the rest of the conference.